Alright everybody, what's the pettiest reason that you've left a game? Let us know in the comments below. The DM shaved my character's head. We were told we were going to be playing a prison escape, which I was excited for, but the DM failed to mention that we'd all be shaven and stripped of all of our possessions, which would then be permanently destroyed. Losing my stuff was, well, what it was. But after spending hours looking for character art, only to have my character stripped of her entire identity in the first 5 minutes, that was pretty sad. Once we actually got into it, the party didn't mesh at all. Despite being told it was an RP-heavy group, it ended up being a room-by-room investigation crawl, just rolling dice and moving on. I tapped out after the first session. I once left during the early phase of combat against a group of bandits. There were 3 players. Player 1 had 2 cohorts, effectively controlling 3 characters in the fight. Player 2 had 1 cohort, so 2 characters in the fight. I only had my character. The battle started with a few rounds of exchanging missile fire, but only player 1 had ranged weapons. The DM retroactively decided that the cohorts also had ranged weapons, despite it not being written down before, so they were the only ones engaging the enemy at that range. I had throwing daggers, but I failed to realize how uselessly short their range was, and I couldn't do anything. Then the DM declared that he would split the combat into 3 separate phases. Player 2's flank would go first, player 1's group would fight the center, and I would fight my single bandit after hours of spectating. I sat there for hours watching everyone else fight. By the time it would have been my turn, everyone would have been too tired to care. When the end of the session approached, I realized my fight would likely just be skipped or hand-waved, so I left early. A few days later, player 2 told me the fight had been endlessly drawn out, with misses and parries, dragging it out for ages. What's the point? I left the game because it was supposed to be kids at summer camp with horror mysteries, and we were all in our 20s. I thought it'd be like Gravity Falls, but no, it was just weird. Also, I couldn't stand one of the players, but they were dating the DM, so there wasn't much I could do. The campaign fell apart from what I heard. Another time, I left because the DM told us, "We're doing the Dark Crystal." For context, we'd previously done a Dark Crystal X Forgotten Realms campaign that we all loved, but it got canned because the DM got busy. We were excited to return, but when we showed up for session 0, it was completely different. It's 80s movies now! The DM told us to make characters based on 2 80s 2000s characters mashed together. None of us were even alive in the 80s, so it was weird. Then the actual game turned into the DM recapping old movies and forcing us to solve puzzles by reenacting scenes from movies we hadn't seen. The kicker? He said there were 500 collectibles, and if we didn't get them all, another 500 would appear. I did the math. We'd have literally been in our 50s by the time we'd finished. The DM later admitted he did it to keep us there forever. Oh my god. There was also a weird thing between the DM and his ex, who was very uncomfortable with the whole situation. It was a mess. Normally, I don't have anything that isn't at least a minor RP horror story, but this one stands out. The GM forbade our characters from having unnatural hair colors. In his setting, everything except black and maybe brown was considered unnatural. Look, I have blue hair in real life, and I couldn't even give my PC blonde hair? Yeah, hard pass, buddy. I left the campaign because it took too long, which is ironic because I love long campaigns. We were playing Strixhaven, which is already critiqued for being lackluster, but the DM made it worse by dragging out the pacing. We'd have several 5-hour sessions go by with 0 story progress. The DM essentially made his girlfriend's character the main character, and the rest of us were just her traveling retinue. The campaign was set in a world he had been writing since high school, and he only bothered to incorporate her backstory into the setting. Her backstory became the entire plot. NPCs would only talk to her unless we forced our way into the conversation. she'd then jump in and take over anyway. To make it worse, there was a pseudo DMPC who was 100% her love interest. After 6 to 7 sessions, another player and I voiced our concerns about feeling uninvolved. The DM said he'd fix it. 2 or 3 sessions later, nothing changed. So the other player learned how to DM and we started our own game with some mutual friends. The game shifted over the course of a session from an adventure game to a join the guild and do guild missions style game. That wasn't what I signed up for, especially since I was playing a character who had been discriminated against and tortured by the government. It worked great when we were on the open road, even if I occasionally had to sneak into town in disguise. But when the game shifted to having some home base in town and doing jobs for the government, my character's entire arc fell apart. I didn't want my arc to be about hiding from the government every session. The party, other than me, unanimously decided that the Artificer, who had just taken a dip in Warlock, deserved the +2 max 22 charisma magic item, instead of me, the Bard, the player with the fewest magic items. Not to mention this package of items came with enough for each party member, yet somehow they divided everything between 3 characters under a character that can use it best gets it policy. Hypocritical bullshit! The DM refused to weigh in at all. It wasn't just the magic item nonsense, the group didn't value my contributions or even take my arguments into account. Meanwhile, the DM was working with everyone's backstories and character arcs, except for mine. I wasn't some third wheel player in the group either. I was one of the first in the party, but it seemed like they just didn't want anything to do with me anymore. Honestly, I'm glad I left. It was toxic, and I didn't like how playing with them made me feel. I played in a mini campaign where the DM treated the module like a literal video game. When we described our characters, he explained it as creating avatars, like a menu at the start of BG3 or The Sims. No backstory allowed. Nothing! Our characters were just us playing a game. The module had 3 parts. I finished the first, but I told the DM I wouldn't be able to attend the next because of a scheduling conflict, which may or may not have been exaggerated. Don't tell. When I play D&D, I want to become my character, not play myself in a video game. It was so immersion-breaking. I couldn't sit through another session. The first part only lasted an hour. Afterward, the DM said, "Oh, I can run the next part right now," despite not even having read it. We politely declined and told him to take the week to prepare. On the upside, I still had fun making meta video game jokes with the other players. The DM, get this, hated roleplay. Yeah. I joined an established group at the start of a Descent into Avernus campaign. The game was fine, but it was very clear that the DM just didn't want to roleplay. For example, I once wanted to haggle with a shopkeeper. I approached in character, explaining that the item was used, so I should get a couple of coppers off. The DM flat out said, no. Then another player who hadn't been paying attention said they wanted to roll to haggle. The DM let him roll and lowered the price for him. I've only recently started playing and have been in 2 campaigns. One ended due to scheduling conflicts, and the other was the one I left. So by default, it's my pettiest reason. The DM made a ruling I didn't agree with and refused to even have a discussion. First, he told me, and I quote, "Just let it fucking go. I'm the DM. What I say goes." Then he ignored my second attempt to talk about it. Yes, I know, the DM has the final say. That doesn't mean I'll tolerate how he went about it. So I left soon after. Later, another player told me the DM had already decided that no matter what I said, he wouldn't even entertain the notion of a discussion. I played in a friend of a friend's Tomb of Annihilation campaign. which I had previously run and had great memories of. And then the DM introduced a level 20 self-insert DMPC, and kept trying to sell us crypto. 3 out of 4 players left after the same session. The DM was unforgiving and would often make this little giggle noise every time we took damage. What? I lost a ton of HP from a deck save, slip and fall into broken shards, ice trap. Shortly after, we fought a Drider Queen, and our party was barely holding it together. Then, I had the fortune of summoning a unicorn from the Wild Magic Surge table. I thought, great, it'll heal us. Nope. The DM giggled and explained that, following the unicorn's alignment, it preferred to hoof attack the evil creature, and it missed every time. I was just done after that. A bunch of friends were playing in my buddy's campaign. It started out great, but things got frustrating fast. The DM would say, "Okay, roll to see if anything happens while you're traveling." We'd roll and then sit there for 20 minutes while he played on his phone, coming up with an encounter. It was always a random encounter, too. Our wizard was playing a necromancer who was trying to use necromancy for good. At some point, the DM gave him a cursed book, but none of us knew it was cursed because, well, that would be metagaming. After 2 sessions, the DM told the wizard he had to start playing his character a certain way. This kept happening. The wizard, who is a super passive guy and hates confrontation, just kept playing, even though he hated it. One day, during a big arena fight, the wizard used Fireball and nearly killed our druid. We told him not to, but he did it anyway. Everyone was furious. A few sessions later, some real-life drama happened between the DM and 2 players, and the group fell apart. Later, I asked the wizard why he did it. He said, "I hated playing the wizard. I didn't know what to do, so I saw an opportunity to make you guys mad at him and hoped you'd kill him or let him die." He explained how he was forced to play the character a certain way. One way to piss me off is to tell someone how to play their character. I wasn't mad anymore. A few years later, I was talking to the other players and I told them I was playing in another campaign with the wizard. They asked, "Why the hell would you play with him again?" I explained the situation and they felt bad for how they treated him. We all still can't stand that DM though. The DM is a player in my current group, but neither of us will ever play with him as a DM again. Cursed items are fine, if done right, but at level 3, being forced to play your character a certain way is absolute bullshit. At the very least, let the player roll to see if those things happen, and make sure they're okay with it beforehand. It took my buddy 4 years to want to play a wizard again. It's his favorite class. A little communication will go a long way, but never tolerate bullshit any time of the day. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know in the comments below. What is the pettiest reason you've left a game? And of course, if you want to get early access to videos, maybe a little bit more, make sure to join our membership program. You keep food on the table, heat in the houses, and you help keep the channel running squeaky clean. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy. See you next time. Toodaloo.